guys, at this point you should have finished the previous assignments that we had on just the simpler expressions when you have zero exponents and negative exponents. I wanted to show you a couple more difficult problems just to show you how this rule applies to situations that have a little bit more to simplify. So if we take a look at question number 1, it says we have m to the negative 3 and n to the 5th. First thing I want you to do, separate with a multiplication dot. Next thing, as we learned before, you're going to make everything into a fraction first. Okay, remember, when you had negative exponents, you only moved the terms that had negative exponents. If something had a positive exponent, like this n to the 5th, we didn't move anything. So if you have m to the negative 3, what you're going to do is, it started out in the numerator, so we're going to move it down to the denominator and make it positive. Remember, if you took everything from the top, you're going to have a 1 as a placeholder, or think flip the fraction. With this n to the 5th power, I'm not going to do anything to it because it has a positive exponent. So if it has a positive exponent, it's already where it should be. So I'm just going to rewrite it. So finally, I'm going to multiply straight across to simplify. So 1 times n to the 5th is n to the 5th, and m to the 3rd times 1 is m to the 3rd. So that's your final answer for question number 1. For question number 2, I have 5 times g to the negative 3rd times h to the negative 4th. I'm going to put that multiplication dot to separate the 5 from the g to the negative 3. And also, I'm going to put that 1 in there because I remember that there is an exponent that's hiding, which is 5 to the 1st. So I'm going to rewrite the problem as 5 to the 1st times g to the negative 3 times h to the negative 4 with those multiplication dots to separate all my factors. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put everything over 1 so that I can start fixing anything that has a negative exponent. So in the first factor, I have 5 to the 1st power, so I have a positive exponent. I'm going to leave it alone, so I'm going to keep 5 to the 1st over 1. This g to the negative 3rd has a negative exponent, so that means I need to move it downstairs. So I'm going to put g to the 3rd in the denominator and flip that 1. Same thing with h to the negative 4. H to the negative 4 becomes h to the positive 4 in the denominator, and I flip it. So finally, I'm going to multiply straight across. So 5 to the 1st is just one copy of 5, so 5 times 1 gives me 5. And then in the denominator, 1 times g to the 3rd times h to the 4th is going to give me g to the 3rd, h to the 4th. And that's your final answer for question number 2. For question number 3, first thing again that I'm going to do is I'm going to separate the 15 and the r with the multiplication dot. Remember, if you have a power on the outside, it gets distributed to both of the factors on the inside. So I would have 15 to the 0 power and r to the 0 power. Remember, anything raised to the 0 power is just 1. So 1 times 1 will give you just 1. You didn't have to really even distribute it because the whole entire thing was raised to the 0 power, so you could have just automatically wrote your answer as 1. Alright, for question number 4, we've already got a fraction, but I'm going to start fixing things up and adding some things in there to make this problem a little easier, like putting the 1 on the 2 and then separating with that multiplication dot. So I have 2 to the 1st power. I'm going to distribute that negative 3 to both of the factors inside the parentheses. So I have 8 to the negative 3rd times x to the negative 3rd. Okay, I'm going to rewrite my fraction. I'm going to keep the 2 to the 1st power because it has a positive exponent. But this 8 to the negative 3rd and x to the negative 3rd are on the wrong floor of the fraction, so I have to move them up. So the 8 to the negative 3rd becomes 8 to the 3rd up in the numerator, and I'm going to put a 1 as a placeholder. Same thing with the x to the negative 3rd. It's in the bottom, wrong place, so I'm going to move it up top, and I'm going to put that 1 as a placeholder. Remember, if you already have a fraction established, you don't need to create one. So your next step is you are just going to simplify 2 times 1 copy of 2 and 3 copies of 8. That's going to give me, when I simplify that on my calculator, 1,024. I'm going to keep my x to the third up top. And when I multiply straight across, I can see that I just have a 1 on the bottom. Anything divided by 1 is just itself. So the final answer is 1,024, x to the third. All right, for question number 5, separate with your multiplication dots. You're going to take that -3 to both factors on the inside. So we have 4 to the -3rd. And then I have n, but I'm distributing this -3 to the -2, which means I'm multiplying them. So -2 times -3 gives me a +6. So when I write it like this, I can see that really there's only going to be one thing that needs fixed, and that's that base of 4. Since this is not a fraction, I'm going to make it into a fraction by putting everything over 1. Okay, the only thing that needs fixed is that 4 to the -3, so I'm going to put that down in the denominator. And I'm going to put the 1 up top for the flip. The n to the 6th power stays put because it has a positive exponent. Now I'm just going to multiply straight across. So when I multiply straight across, I see that I'm going to end up with n to the 6th power, and then 4 to the 3rd on the bottom. And if I multiply out 3 copies of 4, that's going to give me 64. And then I'm going to have my n to the 6th power up top. Okay, question number 6. I remember that if I have the same base, I'm going to keep my base and add my exponents together. So 9 plus -9 is going to give me x to the 0 power. And I remembered that anything raised to the 0 power is 1. And then for question number 4, put your dot in between. We're going to have 4 raised to the -3rd, because I'm distributing that exponent, and then y to the -3rd. Since I do not have fractions, I'm going to make this into a fraction by putting a 1 underneath. Everything's on the wrong floor in this problem, so I'm going to flip this and make this 1 over 4 to the 3rd, and I'm going to make this 1 over y to the 3rd, and then finally I'm going to simplify out my copies of 4 that I have and put it together for the final answer of 1 over 64 y to the 3rd. So again, pause the video as needed, and you can always just double check to make sure you have those answers correctly. But most important thing is that if you don't have a fraction, to make it into a fraction to fix those negative exponents, and if you already do have a fraction like we had in question number 4, you really want to make sure you're not adding any extra work. Just move those negative exponents to the floor that they need to be on.